Shalom, dear friends, and happy Sukkot. I'm going to try to pronounce it. It's Chag Sameach. You know, next year is going to be the year that I actually learn how to say all of that stuff properly. Every year we've done just a little bit more to celebrate and learned a little bit more. So this year I'm not perfect on all my pronunciations, but we did get a lot farther than last year. Happy Sunday, everyone, and also happy last day of the Sukkot holiday. 7 days, 8 days for those outside of Israel, but 7 days for those inside of Israel. And at sunset tonight, Sukkot ends, and what a fun week it has been. Jay has enjoyed it, I believe. He's over there painting. Did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
he's doing some painting. He's working in the Sukkot. Or in the Sukkah.
Really work. This is comfortable.
Yeah. So anyways, I wanted to pop on here before we get ready for our event tonight. We have one more event. We're going to do a potluck and kind of hanging out here under the sukkah. We'll probably be able to pull these curtains. If you notice, all the curtains are pulled back because we've had a couple really windy days, and we actually had a miracle yesterday. The wind was blowing so hard that these curtains were all over the place, and we were going to have all of our family over for dinner. We were doing kind of roasting hot dogs on the fire pit and marshmallows, roasting marshmallows and having s'mores. And all week long I was excited that we get to have our family to come over and do it. And in the mid-afternoon, all of a sudden the wind picked up, and we were about an hour from everybody arriving. And my son got here, and him and I were grabbing curtains and trying to tie them back. And then the wind was so bad that we had to tie the curtains to the chairs because, and now see, it's doing a good example for me. But it was worse than that. And I was just kind of disappointed because I knew as it got to evening it would be cooler, and I was worried that then my family would be too cold to be able to hang out. And I was like, oh, we're gonna have to sit inside and we're not gonna be able to do it. And I just prayed and prayed and prayed, and I said, you know what, God, you calm the storms, you calm the wind in the Bible times, and you're the same God yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so I knew, you know, God, you can calm these storms. And I'm serious, like, it was a little windy right when everybody arrived, and then all of a sudden everything calmed. We were even able to pull the curtains down as it got cooler to keep the warmth in and everything. So it turned out really, really good. And if you're hearing the ladder creaking, that is my little hubby on the ladder.
Sorry.
Trying to do the trying to do the ceiling over here in the patio. But anyways, it has just been a really, really, really fun week. And I wanted to today, since today is the last day of Sukkot, really go over some of the things that I had learned. And I broke it down into words with an R. You know, this has been 3 weeks of holidays. We started with Rosh Hashanah back in the end of September. I don't remember the exact day, but it was about 3 weeks ago. It's the first day on the Jewish calendar of the new year, of the 7th month, first day of the 7th month, which starts their new year. And Rosh Hashanah is also known as the Feast of Trumpets. And I thought of some R words. The R words, just as I was studying this week, just kind of came out, and it was all about restarting, you know, that new year of a restart, and to reflect on last year, of what you did right, what you did wrong, what you want to correct. We all do that in a new year. And then Yom Kippur came 10 days after Rosh Hashanah, and you had your 10 days of awe where you are thinking about God, thinking about His goodness, and you're really also thinking about where you can do some corrections. Do you have any relationships? There's another R word, relationships that you need to repair. So it's all about repenting and then God restoring you and giving you a clean slate. You know, it's that restoration. And years ago, some of my favorite words that I had, my words of the year, were restoration. Was one year I did restoration, and another one I did rebuild. And those were great words to have. So if you're looking for a word for 2023, here's a bunch of R words that you might like. So far we've had restart, reflect, repent, restore. We have repairing relationships. And then we got 5 days after Yom Kippur, we get to Sukkot, where we build the sukkah and celebrate. After God has restored us, we want to celebrate His goodness. And then He also asks us to rest. And the sukkah reminds us that God creates rest in our lives. In even the creation story, you know, He took rest after He had created the world and everything was good, and He rested. And so Sukkot actually starts with a rest day. The first day of Sukkot is a Sabbath, and you are to rest. And the last day, today is the last day, it's also a Sabbath, and you are to rest. And then the other word is reside. I learned all week about how in John 1 it says that Jesus came into this world to tabernacle, to reside, to dwell with us. And when we sit in the Sukkot, we sit and we dwell and we reside, and that gives us rest and restoration. And then it's commanded that we remember. We remember all that God has done for us. It's the story of Sukkot reminds the Israelites of their ancestors who went through the wilderness for 40 years, and God had them living in tents, and they had no means to have their own food, to have their own shelter, to be protected from the elements, to be protected from enemies or from wildlife. And God gave them, the protection, and we remember that. And Sukkot reminds us to sit back and remember all that God has done for us. And so we can sit back and go, you know what? I'm not worried about the future. I'm not worried about the fact that I don't know where the money for the bills are going to come, or where this is going to happen, or where am I going to live, or what's this new job going to be like, because I remember that God has been good to me all through these years. So remembering is a huge part of Sukkot, and sitting and remembering God's goodness. And then to rejoice. It is a celebration. You can actually look on YouTube, look it all up, and you will see that the entire country of Israel, especially Jerusalem, turns into a rejoicing and praising and dancing and eating, and it's a feast. And so it reminds us to rejoice. They even have the lulav and the etrog. I'm going to get those down to where they are the sticks. One is a palm branch, one is a willow branch, one is another tree, and then there is that large etrog, which looks like a giant lemon or a gourd, and I guess it smells really good. I got to get one next year. I want to see, they make etrog jelly out of it, or all different kinds of things. Anyways, and you are basically shaking your harvest, God's goodness, and you're shaking that before the Lord, and you shake it in 6 different directions to symbolize that God is everywhere in all nations, and that all nations will come to Him. It's really been interesting to watch on YouTube all of the different channels that are showing nations, people, and their flags are all coming to Jerusalem and celebrating with the Jewish people this week. So that's rejoice is a really big thing. See, even the trees, they're shaking their hands in praise. It actually says that the rocks will cry out, and nature will praise God. And then rejuvenate. God gives us rejuvenation. To take a week off and to separate yourself from your normal crazy life is so good. When you go on vacation, it gives you new perspective. When you just even go on a small trip, just getting away from your normal stuff. And I think that's what it's meant to be here in the sukkah, is to separate yourself and to pull yourself away from your normal house, your normal bed, because some of them actually sleep out here. They eat out here. They do everything out here. And so what that does is it pulls them out of their normal routine so that they can get a new perspective and they can rejuvenate and reset. I think it kind of gives you a reset, which it is the Jewish New Year. So in this 3 weeks of celebration and contemplation, you're resetting for the new year. What if we did our new year 3 weeks long, where we really took the time to clean out our lives, not just our closets, and we really started to, just had a really 3 weeks to contemplate the new year and get on the right track. The other thing with rejuvenate is every year, we've only really been discovering this for the last 3 years. So the first year we just kind of studied it in the Bible and we're like, this is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing. In Nehemiah, they did the same thing. I was studying Nehemiah, and all the exiles had gone into Babylon. And then the king there had finally, after many, many years, let a lot of them go back to Jerusalem. And they were going back to their roots, going back to Jerusalem. And they didn't know they hadn't pulled out the Torah and read the Torah. And when they finally built the walls in Nehemiah's day, and they had parts of the temple built, they pulled out the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, and they started to read it out loud to everybody day after day. And they came to the part of the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, and they were like, wait a minute, we are in the time of Sukkot. Why are we not celebrating? Oh my gosh. So they quickly ran out and got stuff to build their little booths, and they celebrated for the first time in years and years and years. And so last year I was really or 2 years ago, I was really discovering that. Last year we had built the pergola, and I kind of tried. In Bible study, we searched it, we looked at YouTube videos, and we kind of tried to celebrate it a little bit. This year we took it up a notch, and we went just a little bit farther. And so I know next year is going to be even better, but this year I discovered some really exciting stuff. If in the last days of the final day of Sukkot, in the ceremonies at the temple, back even before Jesus was there, but this was very popular in Jesus's day, they had certain ceremonies that they did. When you start to discover these, and I'll link this article down in the description. It is actually from firmisrael.org, and it is called How is the Feast of Tabernacles Observed? And it actually just gives kind of a step-by-step of how to celebrate it as a Jewish person. And it talks about Hoshana Raba, which is what they would cry out in the last ceremonies, which meant great salvation. So they were asking for a great salvation. And then they had a water pouring ceremony, because remember at Yom Kippur, just 5 days earlier, in the olden times, when Jesus was around, they would be doing sacrifices to cleanse the nation and to ask God for forgiveness for the nation. And so here was that, altar that had just 5 days earlier. Actually, at this point, you're celebrating all 7 days, but at the end of Sukkot, and the priest would go down to the pool of Shalom, and he would dip and grab some water from the pool of Shalom, and then he'd walk it up to the temple and to the altar, and he would pour the water on the altar, kind of cleaning the altar, and they were asking for salvation. And there is a whole thing, I'll put a video about that, about how wine in the Hebrew language actually means judgment, and how water is mercy. And so what they were asking for was for the nation is, now we've done our sacrifices, we've done our praise, we've done all of this, and now we're pouring out the water. We were asking for mercy. And in John chapter 7, you are going to see Jesus at the Feast of Tabernacles, at this Sukkot celebration. And on the last day, and I've read this 100 times in the New Testament and never fully understood what was going on. He walks up to the priests during this ceremony. They're calling out for the great salvation, and they're pouring water over, which means mercy. And he walks up and he says to them, let me find it on my little Bible app here, John 7. This part starts in verse 37. On the last day of the feast, the great day, Jesus stood up and cried out, "If anyone thirsts," now remember they're pouring water, "let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture says, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." And we know that Jesus has the living water. He is the living water. And so John chapter 7 comes alive when you understand what Sukkot is and what the ceremonies were being, what they were doing through these ceremonies, and why Jesus would say what he would say to the leaders, and why they got so upset. They got upset because they're putting on this ceremony that they feel is holy, and this man walks up and basically says, "I will give them living water. I will give you salvation." And they're like, that's heresy. That is ridiculous. And so when you study, and that's why we study the Old Testament, why we study these traditions, is because it will bring the New Testament to life. And here I'm sitting here, I don't know if you can see, but here in the background is our waterfall, our version of living water, and it's so peaceful. Water brings peace, it brings joy, and we have just really enjoyed this week. It's going to be hard tomorrow to go back to a normal schedule, but I have reset and rejuvenated, reset, and I'm ready tomorrow to just start again with a new perspective. So thank you guys all for joining me. I'm gonna, like I said, link down that article and go all the way down to where it talks about, you'll have to scroll down to the water pouring ceremony, Hoshana Raba and the water pouring ceremony, and then read John chapter 7. And then I'm also going to put in that video about, in the Hebrew language, and this is a rabbi who does not believe in Jesus, but he's telling you what Sukkot means and what the rain, they pray for rain when they're sitting in their Sukkots, because they're praying for mercy. They're praying for God's grace. And Jesus is that grace. He is that mercy. So it's just so good when you connect all the dots. And sorry that the lighting is bad out here. Sorry that, it's hard to see. I even had to put on sunglasses because it's so bright out here. But I wanted to bring you out here and enjoy this with you. I'm going to put on a couple little clips of our family hanging out around the fire pit last night. I've got a few pictures of last week. I didn't take very many pictures. I didn't take any pictures last Sunday when we had our Bible study group here, but a friend of mine did that was here, took a few. And tonight we're going to do the last one, but I'll already have this video up, so I won't have those pictures, but that's okay. Just know that we celebrated, we enjoyed, we had a wonderful potluck, and we just enjoyed fellowship. And that's what Sukkot is all about. It's sitting down and stopping in the middle of our busy lives and remembering God, having our friends around us, welcoming people in, just like God welcomes us in. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this week. Also, there is a playlist, and it has some of the songs I've been listening to. There's some really beautiful worship songs in Hebrew for Sukkot, but then there's also some funny songs. So there is one about building your sukkah, and it's pretty funny. So I'll leave you with all of that. Check out the playlist, check out the videos in the description and the article. Love you all. Have a wonderful week, and happy Sukkot. Love you. Shalom. Have a great week.